right, Maddie, we are live.
Hello. Thank you, Bobby. Hello, everybody. This is Maddie Cheers, and welcome to Radical Democracy. This week's topic is radical courage, the most heroic millennial feminist you never heard of. So last Friday happened to be International Women's Day, for those of you that did not know that. And during the week leading up to that, which, by the way, it is Women's History Month, this March, right now, all month, a friend of mine, Debbie, thank you, Debbie Martin, sent an article to me. And the article was about the two Nobel Peace Prize winners from 2018. And the article was written in Great Britain, and it was about how they have received no coverage in the United States. So let me tell you who they are and what they won the Nobel Prize for. I'm going to read to you the quote from the Nobel Committee. They have both put their own personal security at risk by courageously combating war crimes and securing justice for victims. They have both helped to give greater visibility to wartime sexual violence. UN Resolution 1820, which was passed in 2008, determined that the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and armed conflict constitutes both a war crime and a threat to international peace and security. So the reason I said the most heroic millennial feminist is because I used to think that one of the problems was that we had no more heroes, that kids really didn't have somebody to look up to. But I've since changed my mind. I think that part of the problem is that we don't know what a hero is. We have watered down the meaning of being a hero, the meaning of courage. We really assign this to so many people, to just people who speak out, who speak their mind. Granted, it takes a lot of self-confidence to speak your mind. It takes a certain amount of courage to say what you need to say, but that doesn't make you heroic, and it doesn't make you a courageous person all the time. So I'm going to start by introducing you to Nadia Murad. Nadia Murad is Yazidi, and I'm going to also start by saying, for those of you who may have children in the room while you're listening to this is going to be a little hard. I am way toning it down from what actually happened to her. So I'm going to go through the briefest explanation I can and the most gentle explanation, but still it is probably not an explanation that you want your young children to hear. So Nadia Murad was captured in 2014 and sold into sex slavery, targeted because the Yazidi are a minority religion in Iraq. She was targeted by ISIS. And when ISIS took over her small village, she and a lot of girls her age, young teenage women, endured months of rape and torture and were also sold into slavery. She was fortunate enough to escape. And one of the people that wrote about her and wrote about why they were so inspired to see that she has been given this award was a woman named Eve Ensler. And for those of you who know of Eve Ensler, she wrote the Vagina Monologues. And she actually, I take that back, sorry, I have that wrong. She wrote about the other recipient of this award who received it for a similar reason, and I'll talk about him in a moment. But as far as Nadia goes, she escaped, and to quote the article written in The Guardian about her, a British paper, then even as she grappled with mental and physical aftershocks of extreme trauma, she decided to speak publicly about what she had suffered. Her autobiography is titled The Last Girl because she wants to ensure she is, and I quote, the last girl in the world with a story like mine. She wrote what happened to her in her autobiography. Again, that's The Last Girl, if you would like to read that. And that that she was able to and willing to speak out about this is really beyond inspiring to me. And I hope to you as you are listening to this, and I hope to other people that you tell about this broadcast, that you tell about Nadia Murad. Nadia Murad, in this passing International Day of the Woman, had no, and I do mean no, invitations to speak anywhere in the United States. She spoke once in the United States right after she won the award at Duke University, October 30th, and has not been invited back during this particular round of the Women's History Month, where lots of people are speaking. And even Malala Yousafzai, who, I don't know if you're familiar with her, who won the Nobel Prize in 2014, she was the woman who was shot in the head by the Taliban for trying to get girls educated in Afghanistan. And she was a miracle. I mean, to many people, she's a huge inspiration. She won the Nobel Peace Prize and was touring around the world and giving talks and celebrated even in the United States until about 2016. And she has not been invited to speak here until 2016, which will become significant later on. So that is the kind of courage and heroism we are talking about. We are talking about people who put themselves in harm's way. Those are the people who risk their lives to help others. They risk their mental health. They risk everything to make sure that they can help others. In 2012, and unfortunately, I couldn't find a pronunciation for his name, but Dr. Denis Mukwege of the Eastern Congo was written about by Eve Ensler. I did get that right this time, who wrote, for those of you that are familiar with the play, very popular, The Vagina Monologues. And she titled her article, "We Have Few Heroes in This World." Denis is one of those heroes. Congolese doctor and human rights activist who has helped tens of thousands of women and girls in Eastern Congo, a brutal war zone, for the last 14 years. He has survived assassination attempts, and yet he stays. He has invented surgeries to help victims of rape and other acts of cruelty, helping to repair 30,000 rape victims. And yet, not a single invitation to speak. Nothing. I'm going to ask you who are listening out there, have you heard of either of these people? I'm hoping you've heard of Malala, because she received far more publicity in this country than they did. So I really believe that the problem is manyfold. I think that our definition of heroism, our definition of courage, has been politically watered down, because we throw those terms around about anybody who speaks up, and we especially assign it to women who speak their mind, or women who are speaking their mind politically correctly. We do not assign it to women who disagree with us. And what's been happening lately is even more disturbing, because what I've noticed lately with a lot of young people, and not all, because I would never stereotype the way many young people do, unfortunately, but what has been happening a lot lately is that I notice that a lot of politically active young people don't even want to listen. They don't even want to talk to somebody who disagrees with them. It does not take courage to go to run for office and then refuse to debate your opponent, as a very popular young woman did in New York, for those of you who were not there for her election, and I'm sure you know who I allude to. And it does not take courage to hold your town hall meetings behind a closed door, where you invite no press and no other observers. It does not take courage to tweet nasty comments in response to other nasty comments. It does not take courage to degrade and bully someone who disagrees with you. And it does not take courage to silence others who disagree with you by coercing them to vote in a way you want them to, by threatening them with public embarrassment. None of that takes any courage at all. All it takes is ego and arrogance. And that is what we are seeing a lot of. I am willing to say that the press probably is prejudiced and reports it more in that way, because last night I had the great good fortune to sit in a circle with a group of young people who were all around 25 or 26 who were not at all like this. So I am so not going to stereotype in the way that many young people do about certain political parties, about certain races, because I don't believe there's anything, by the way, as reverse racism. If you are putting someone down, if you are suggesting that they are not as smart as you or that they are not as capable as you just because of the color of their skin, I don't care if their skin is white, black, yellow, red, you are a racist. So if you think you're fighting racism by being a racist, guess it again. If you think you are fighting hatred by teaching people to hate people and every time somebody disagrees with you, you call them a hater just because they disagree with you, you are not fighting hatred. You are ensuring hatred. You are on the same side of anybody else who uses skin color or religion in order to degrade somebody else and in order to make their point. And none of that qualifies as heroic. None of that qualifies as courage. What takes courage is to do what these people did, to stand up. Dr. Dennis, I'm going to call him just because I so respect this man. I wouldn't want to mispronounce his name. Dr. Dennis, 14 years in the Eastern Congo, surviving assassination attempts. Nadia Murad, months and months as a sex slave, surviving rape, surviving degradation, and manages to find the inner strength to start Nadia's initiative. Let me repeat that. You can look it up on Facebook. You can Google it. Nadia's initiative, which is dedicated to ending sex slavery, just like her book says. She wants to be the last girl in the world with a story like hers. So these people define courage. These people define heroism. These are the people that our children should be looking at as role models, not people who don't bother to educate themselves enough to even understand the U.S. Constitution after they've been elected, not people who use others and manipulate others into doing what they want, not people like that, not people who are not willing to talk to those who disagree with them. Zero courage required for that. Really easy to shut yourself in a room and just talk to the people who agree with you. Really easy to put down the people who disagree with you. Extremely easy. Zero courage, lots of ego, lots of arrogance, and actually lots of insecurity. That's exactly what it takes. Because if you are so insecure about your position on anything that you cannot even stand up and debate with somebody, not to mention stand up and take your pain and your suffering out into the world so that you can make somebody else's life better. If you don't have the courage to debate somebody, you sure as hell do not have the courage to do something heroic. So we need to stop calling people heroes who are not heroes. They are not role models. They are not people that we should be teaching our daughters and our sons to look up to. But Dr. Dennis and Nadia Murad and Malala Yousafzai are. These are feminists. These are feminists who should be speaking every single day of the year, certainly every single month of Women's History Month, and certainly here in the United States during International Women's Month, and on International Women's Day. These are the people who are our role models. You know, I had a discussion yesterday. We were talking about John Kennedy's statement a while ago, a long time ago, actually, but it's pretty famous now. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And I said that to a 35-year-old, so I guess granted on the edge of the millennial age. And she said to me, no, 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 no. You know what it's all about now? It's all about what's in it for me. That's what they look at. And if you don't have something, which is so interesting, because in talking with my sister Celia, who's here with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about role modeling and how you get your kids to be more courageous and to recognize the truth and to be strong individuals, how you do that, truly strong individuals. We were talking about how that's an advertising philosophy. That's what people are told when you stand up and you're going to speak about, buy this from me or join my group. You have to be focused on presenting what's in it for me. Now, if you're selling something and you're promoting a business, that's no big deal. But when you are leading a country, when you are leading any community, that is a huge deal. That is a very big deal. None of your decisions should be based on what's in it for me. Who you're listening to should not be based on what's in it for me. You should not cut off someone who just may have a better idea than you because you're too afraid. And let me say that, you are a coward. You are a coward. If you do not listen to somebody who disagrees with you, you are the farthest thing from a hero. You are the opposite. You are a coward. And if you are not smart enough to defend your decision, and that is why you will not debate somebody who disagrees with you, that is why you hold your town hall meetings behind closed doors, then you are not intelligent enough to be somebody who serves this country. I'm going to go back to the character qualities from the Great Law of Peace of their leaders. In service, let me remind you that heroes are always in service to others. When we look at what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, you are looking at a journey that people make where they go out, they face hardship, they get through their hardship. And since they're getting through this hardship, they then take this journey of hardship and self-discovery and bring it back to the community and make the community a better place. They don't regurgitate somebody else's failed policies. They don't hold up as heroes people who killed 100 million people and then decide, you know what, I like those guys. Those guys are badass. They believe what I believe. So what if they killed 100 million people? It's astounding to me, absolutely astounding, that some of these millennial Marxists actually think that Stalin and Mao were wonderful people. I just spent almost 2 weeks with a woman from China, Dr. Mei Li Pinto, who is a Confucian expert and also an expert on all things Chinese and whose family escaped from Mao. And let me tell you, this is not a wonderful human being by any stretch of the imagination. If you're going to admire Stalin or Mao as heroes, you might as well throw Hitler in the mix because they are exactly the same. Exactly, except for the fact that each one of Stalin and Mao, each one of them killed about 5 times as many people, murdered, let me use that word, about 5 times as many people who disagreed with them as Hitler did. So this nonsense that anybody that called themselves a socialist, you're giving socialists a bad name. There's actually a lot in the philosophy of socialism that I agree with and I think should be implemented. But I in no way think that any of these people that were dictators or Xi, who's the dictator in China now, should be held up as heroes. Because their way of being admired, their way of being followed is to ensure that people fear them. You speak out against them, you're dead. You're in prison. You're a slave. You're beaten up. And if that's your intention, if you think that what you believe in is so right that you're going to beat up somebody who disagrees with you, that's not what we're talking about here. Nadia Murad was beaten. Nadia Murad went through things that would break most other human beings. and manage to have the courage and the inner fortitude, the inner strength to pull herself up and fight for other people who were going through or have gone through what she went through. There are still thousands and thousands of Yazidis that are missing. There are thousands of Yazidi girls and women in refugee camps receiving no mental help, no mental health help, receiving no emotional care, receiving no medical care. There are thousands of women dying in the Congo every day because of that conflict. And yet these people stay. These people stay and go back and at great risk to themselves speak out. Not just speaking, but asking us to walk hand in hand with them. And if it means giving them money, if it means showing up for their speeches, if it means inviting them to speak, then that is what we need to do, because this is an international problem. All of these people, all of these millennial political activists always talking about, we need global government, we need world change, we need the new world order, we need all this global things. We should not have global things without the caring and compassion necessary to listen to each other, without looking at the global criminality of sex slavery of girls and women and boys. We cannot talk about global justice without looking at this issue. And why we have stopped looking at this issue since 2016, I think, is because it is no longer politically correct. Because we are talking about countries, we are talking about people committing these crimes who are seen as, we don't want to say anything bad about them. We don't want to say bad things about them. We can't say bad things anymore about those people. And I think it is because in our political climate, if President Trump likes somebody, we hate them. If President Trump likes a policy, we hate that policy. And we use the word hate, which is unbelievable. My mom, I will never forget. When I was a little girl, I got very anxious about something. I was very frustrated about something. I can't remember that. But I can remember standing in the basement going, I hate this. And my mom came up to me and she said, never use that word. Never use that word. That is one of the most powerful words in the world. And you never use that word. If you like, you can use, I don't like this, I feel frustrated, I'm angry. You can say things like that, but you never use the word hate in reference to a person or even an idea. And just that, I think, shaped a great deal, of who I am as a human being. Because that is what has allowed me to look at everybody and see them as a human being, even the horrible people I've mentioned, because it's important. It's important to look at the world the way the Haudenosaunee do, to look at the world as being comprised of people with the good mind and the quick mind. The good mind that's grateful, that's respectful, that's kind, that's loving. Not the quick, I want it now, what's in it for me mind. Again, leadership. Leadership is putting others before yourself. Leadership is acting in service to others. That's also heroism. So I asked my sister to join me today, partly because I'm at her house. I'm broadcasting from here, and she's sitting right next to me. But partly because she's one of the greatest parents I know, and as you know, she has her site on Facebook, Pumped Up Parenting, and she did a series on character. And that is what we really should be looking at. What we really should be looking at is the character of the people we are choosing to admire and the character of the people we are choosing as leaders. That is where we will initiate change. That is where it begins for changing the world. And it begins with how you educate your children, how you educate them as a parent, and how the school system educates them. So I'm going to turn it over to Celia, and we're going to talk a little bit about children and character.
Hold on. We're switching chairs. Hello, world. So basically, it's important to create children that have character. And through you creating children that have character means you must also have character. Children learn from what you do, much more than just a bunch of words. You can say things all the time, over and over again, but if you are doing something, that's what they're mimicking. There is literally a section of your brain, an area that is the mimic area, the what's the word I'm thinking of? The copy area, where you see something and you mimic it. You see something and you copy it. And in children, this is how they learn. This is their strong point, learning how to mimic their role models, and their role models are their parents, their strongest role model at the beginning of their life. Mirror, thank you. That is it, the mirror. That is you mirror them. Thank you, I couldn't think of it. So the first thing in my eyes that is really necessary in instilling in your children, and honestly, I'm not one to even associate with people that do not have this character trait, and that is integrity. Mm-hmm. And in the political arena, obviously, MADDI speaks a lot about that. There are not a lot of people in the political arena that have integrity. And what is integrity? So we can put it in simple forms. For a parent, you do what you say you're going to do. If you tell your child you're going to do something, you do it. You don't lie, and you never, ever, ever ask your children to lie. That means you don't keep secrets. You don't say to your child, oh, this will be our secret. Because interpreted, that means I can lie. You're giving them permission to lie if you're asking them to keep a secret. Because then they're like, they have to think about, okay, well, I can't tell the truth about this because it's supposed to be a secret, blah, 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 blah. And that is a lie. So secrets are lying. And when you ask your kids to keep a secret, you give them the permission to lie. You kill any chance of them having integrity and doing what they say they're going to do. Another important thing to teach your children is not to assume. And when you don't assume with your kids, you teach them also not to assume. How do you combat assumption? You ask questions. How important is it in life to know that it is okay to ask questions, even authority? Question authority. If you have a teacher and by simply teacher handing out an assignment and you are confused by it and no one else in your classroom is asking a question, you raise your hand and you ask. We are human beings. We are not mind readers. If you are in a relationship with somebody else, be it a friend, be it a lover, be it a family member, be it some kind of business relationship, you ask questions. You don't just assume things. Assuming leads to horrible things that live deep inside of us and build and build and build because we are interpreting something that may not exist at all. It may be, just an imaginary thing like fear. Fear is imaginary. It is not real. And so one of your very important things to teach your children is to teach them to question. And how do you do that? You question them. If you're having a conversation with your children about something, don't just assume they're in the wrong. Maybe something happened in school. Take their side. Already assume they are not in the wrong and ask questions about it. Maybe you'll find out that they did something that they didn't realize was not a good thing to do, and then they will learn from it. So teach your children to ask questions, teach them to communicate clearly. It's a lot of the problem in this society with the written word. We text, they email, they post on Facebook, and it is all interpreted through the person reading that written word. It is not interpreted as to how it was meant. There's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of arguments that are created because someone wrote something in a post, in a text, that can be interpreted a number of ways. So teach your children that they should be talking to each other, looking at their facial expressions, learning emotions through facial expressions and gestures, those nonverbal cues that cannot be interpreted or learned about through a text. Also, another great value to teach your child is not to take things personally. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, let me tell you too, when your child does something, especially a toddler, does something that goes against your wishes, don't take it personally. They're little. They're learning things. They're growing their independence. They're not doing it because, hey, I know it's going to make mom really mad. They don't have that brain capacity yet. So don't take it personally, and teach your children not to take things personally. When things happen, when people say things that are obnoxious or arrogant or destructive to someone else, it may still be destructive, but it's a whole lot less destructive if you understand that the person saying it, this is their problem, not your problem. That what their issue is showing itself through possibly cutting you down or being, criticizing you about something you're wearing or something you're doing. Bullies do it all the time. And it is not about the person who's being bullied. It is more about the person doing the bullying, and that they have learned through maybe being raised and people they associate with that you slam people down by bullying them. MADDI has something to talk about.
And that's what we're seeing a lot in politics. We have everybody getting down on the party that they dislike because they call them bullies. They say, oh, well, they're bullying. No, they're bullying. No, they're bullying. They're all bullying. They're all bullying. If you're calling somebody a bully and then making fun of them or stereotyping them, you're a bully too. There just like Celia's going through, there are rules about what a bully is. It can be defined. These actions, these activities, these behaviors can be defined. We have lost the way to define them. So I'm going to go back to Celia so she can continue to define them for you.
That's good, though. But it is so true. And you have to recognize that. People that they have their stand and they're fixed, and like MADDI talked about, are not willing to listen to other people to hear their side and understand that we all have our opinions. And it's okay to have a different opinion than someone else. It's okay. You don't need to take it personally that they don't agree with you. If we all agreed on the same, where would we be? Where would this world be? If we were all identical human beings with identical thought patterns, we'd be the Stepford Wives. If you remember that show, like us old people do, they were people that thought a lot, acted alike, did everything exactly alike. They were robots. And that's what this society would be if we weren't able to exchange our thoughts, our ideas, our ways to disagree with somebody in a calm, constructive way and actually start communication and have a conversation with each other and not take it personally that someone doesn't agree. And as MADDI brought up the thing about hate, if you go, oh, I hate people that think like that, you're still hating them. It's still hate. Hate is hate, whether it's the hate you agree with or the hate you don't agree with, it's still hate if you're talking about hate. If you're saying, I hate them because they don't agree with me, you are hating on somebody. So now let's move on to number 4. And this is something that everybody needs to do and recognize, and especially something that needs to be instilled in your children, and that is to always do your best. Take pride in what you do. Don't just do it because someone else is doing it. When you work, take pride in what you do, in the way you work. People that do all the jobs of society, because somebody, cleans up, a pollution site for a living, or they collect up garbage, or they're doing what some people think are quote unquote menial tasks. Where would this country be without those people that perform those extremely important duties of life? Where would we be? You take pride in whatever you do, and you recognize the greatness of other people, of what they're doing when they're working hard. And you see that no matter what you're doing, it should be a point of pride in your life. When your kids do their homework, if they're scribbling on a paper because they want to get done as quick as they can so they can get off and play Fortnite, and you look at their paper and it looks like a big mishmash, you talk to them and you go, okay, let's pretend that you're the teacher and somebody turned in this piece of paper. What would you think? What would you say to that student? And I guarantee you they will immediately recognize that it's a big mishmash of mess. And are they taking pride in their work? No. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, you have good information here, but honestly, I can't read it. And if I can't read it, I'm not sure your teacher could. So how about we rewrite this? And then after this is rewritten, then you can go do whatever you need to do once you have seen how nicely your work is. And then you compare things. And then, you can show them the difference. The idea is to teach your children to have a work ethic, to take pride in what they do, and to always do your best. When you are always doing your best, the outcome is insignificant. When you always do your best, grades, achievements, insignificant. Because if you've always done your best and you didn't get the outcome you wanted, then you just tweak it and find a new path to achieve that outcome.
And some days your best is going to be different.
And some days your best is different. And some days it depends on how you're feeling. It depends on your mood. And you also have to understand that. If you're sick, some days your best won't be as good as it can be because you're not feeling well. And you have to recognize that. And the last point I want you to instill and remember for yourself, be an example, and talk to your kids about is to welcome mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're all human. And you're even allowed to do over and change your mind. What if you decide to agree with somebody and then the more you look into it, the more you're like, you know what? I don't really agree with this person. That's okay. It's okay to say, you know what? I think I kind of made a mistake when I sided with this person because I don't really agree with what's going on. We all make mistakes. The idea is to educate yourself, to learn from those mistakes. I always use the example of Edison, who invented the light bulb, and how he made 1,000 mistakes before he invented the light bulb. And when asked about all these mistakes, he said, I didn't make 1,000 mistakes. I discovered it takes 1,000 steps to invent a light bulb. And that's what your children need to learn, and you need to learn. And when you make a mistake, share it with your kids. Explain it. Say, you know what, I made a mistake today. Hey, but it was great because I figured out how to do this and this. So those are things I want to talk to you about, how you can help your kids really empower them and really make them understand others in a much better light. And I'm going to hand this back over to MADDI.
Thank you, Celia. So I just want to elaborate on this idea of being able to admit your mistakes. This is part of the problem we face with our political leadership, and especially with our younger political leadership, is a sense of arrogance. And this arrogance, this unwillingness to admit that you're wrong. I saw a great post, I think it was yesterday or the other day, somebody sent out that said, be teachable. You're not always right. So humility, among the character qualities for a Haudenosaunee leader, is being humble. I think we mentioned a few weeks ago when Marianne Francisi was on the show, we talked about her, a course she took in business. And one of their speakers was a very well-known and very well-to-do, not that I can remember his name, businessman. He started a company. He was having no fun. He left the company sold it because he just was miserable all the time, and decided that what he really needed to do was to establish a company where people had humility. And that's how he hired people. He hired them based on whether or not they were humble, because if you're humble, you can work on a team. If you're humble, you're not afraid to admit when you did something wrong and try it again. If you're humble, you're persistent. You don't give up because you're secure. We think of humility and being humble as something that's bad. That no, you got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to be macho. Whether you're a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, you got to be out there. You got to be tough. You got to be a warrior. Well, let me tell you something. There's an old quote, not that I remember who wrote it, mind you, but maybe I'll look it up before next week, or next week when we talk about mastery versus mediocrity with my martial artist husband, Bob. I can ask him, but there's a quote about the difference between a warrior and a soldier. A warrior fights for love, someone or something that he or she loves. A soldier just follows orders. And that's what we see a lot of. We see a lot of this. We see a lot of soldiers. I don't see a lot of warriors out there. Just being willing to stand up and call somebody a name or make fun of them or make your living off of making fun of them does not make you a warrior. Just being able to shout somebody down does not make you a warrior. A Haudenosaunee leader gets punched in the face. They can't even punch back. They have to be a perfect example of peace and non-revenge. Can you imagine? Haudenosaunee leaders, when they go to a state dinner, let's call it, they're at the end of the line. Everybody else eats before them, because if there's no more food left, their people should eat. They should starve. They are in service. That is what we have gotten away from. We only want people in service to us who agree with us. This is not courage. I am going to go back to that again. That is not courage. What is courage? It takes courage to put yourself in harm's way. That's number one. And harm's way could mean you're going to take a lot of verbal abuse, because again, for Native Americans, by the way, they consider verbal abuse akin to murder. You're killing somebody's spirit, but you're going to have that skin 7 layers thick. You're going to be strong, because that verbal abuse, even that physical abuse, is not going to change who you are. So it takes courage to do that. It takes courage. It takes heroism to put yourself in harm's way for another. It takes courage to speak your truth while listening to someone who disagrees with you. It takes courage to have compassion. It takes courage to see the person you disagree with as being an equal human being to you. It takes courage to help somebody who needs help, to be compassionate, to see the pain and insecurity in somebody who's arrogant and somebody who's too cowardly to listen. You should be compassionate for them, not pitying, but compassion. Compassion is very different than pitying. Pitying belittles the person. It makes you feel better than them. And then you remember the times when you didn't have the strength to stand up, and how that strength in you had to grow or had to be built by your parents or your community. And that's another thing we talked about. It takes courage to be a member of a community. We talked about this a lot last night in Circle, that this is what young people feel like they're missing. They're missing community because Facebook is not a community. This is not a community. There's a great, I was hoping to find the title of the book. I read the review on the book in the New York Times review of books about a week or two, I think it was from a week ago, maybe two. But the book is about how technology is destroying democracy. And it's destroying it in a way because these groups, these protest groups on one side or the other, all pop up on Facebook. There they are. They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They're on other social media platforms. I'm old, so I don't know them all. So, and they pop up. Everybody gets all riled up. Everybody starts jumping up and down, talking hate, talking about, oh, we're going to defeat this one, defeat that one, on both sides of arguments. And then 1 week later, we're on to a new topic. 1 week later, we forgot what we were angry about last week. And the author compares it to what happened during the civil rights movement. When Martin Luther King and his allies started the civil rights movement, they started in 1955. It took them until 1963 to put things together, to train people in nonviolent protest and to get enough people with them to go out and make a difference. That movement was a mile wide and 1,000 million miles deep. These movements that we see today are a mile wide and skin deep. Because there's no, you got, as they used to say, you got no skin in the game. You're not losing anything. You're sitting there typing up a bunch of crap. You're not listening to anybody. You're just typing your opinion out. Very easy to do. Very hard, and that's why bullying is on the rise. Very hard to sit and look at somebody's face crumble while you're belittling them. Very hard to watch yourself murder somebody's spirit, because that's what you're doing. And that's what you have to face. But if you can do it on a typewriter and you can send it out over Facebook, not only do you not care, but you're diminishing your ability for empathy. You're diminishing your ability for compassion, because that requires that you go face to face with somebody. And that takes courage. And it takes courage to forgive. So maybe somebody, like Celia said, did offend you. Forgive them. Forgive yourself. If you feel like you didn't do your best one day, so you had a bad day, forgive yourself and forgive others. There are certain things there that are extremely difficult to forgive. Betrayal, I'm not saying that this is easy, but that does take courage. And when I hear people in the political arena stand up, make fun of people, characterize and stereotype the party that they disagree with or the age group that they disagree with, that hurts me. Because it hurts all of us. Because then we diminish our entire community. Stereotyping is a form of hatred because you belittle people. You cannot say that all the people do this thing. All the people with this color skin do this. All the men do that. All the women do the other. My nephew just made me aware of this big hatred campaign against Captain Marvel, against this movie, because this is the backlash. And this is where, again, talked many times about that 7 generational thinking about, you have to think about how your actions will affect others, not today, not tomorrow, but way into the future. So the protest and anger and hatred over Captain Marvel being an ultra-feminist movie is a backlash to the severity of what happened with when people say all women must be believed. And then when the wrong person gets accused of abusing a woman, are we there or are we hypocrites? Are we there in force like we were when the person we wanted taken out had to be taken out? No, we're not as women. We are not standing up, sadly, for all women. Again, going back to what Morgan said about the pseudo-sisterhood and her difficulties that she's facing. not faking. Oh my God, forgive me, Morgan. But some people are faking sisterhood. I will say that. If you are in sisterhood and brotherhood with somebody, you are compassionate towards them. And like we have said over and over again, you can respect them while disagreeing with them. That takes courage. It takes courage to do any of those things that put yourself second, that don't make you the star. We've had many great women leaders who were Republican Party leaders that have been trashed by other women over these last several years, including times when things were made up about them that were not true, and yet months and weeks and still going on. This is still going on today. This political correctness is out of control because it is born of fear. Courage is born of love. Heroism is born of love. That is the biggest difference. These people, Nadia Murad, Dr. Dennis, and Malala Yousafzai, these people have courage. They love women so much. They love girls. They love people so much that they are willing to die for them. If you are not, there's another famous quote by somebody, if you do not have enough passion for a cause that you are willing to die for it, you do not have courage. And I'm not talking about kill for it. I'm not talking about going out and doing what Stalin said, death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. That's not courage. That's cruelty. That's cowardice. Arm yourself and then kill the people that disagree with you. That is not courage. So that is what we're talking about. And how we instill that in our children is extremely important. It's extremely important to the survival of this community that we call the United States, of this community that we call the Earth. And we cannot survive. We cannot survive unless we follow the advice that actually I'm going to go to Buddha, which sort of goes to something that Celia talked about earlier, about don't assume things and question authority. There's a great article in Time magazine, by the way, on the Dalai Lama, another man who's not invited to speak in the world anymore because we've decided that, it offends China. So now he's not the Buddhist that's speaking. Other people will speak, but he doesn't get invited to speak much anymore because of his stance on China's invasion of his home, Tibet. But what he says and what he reminds me of is that the Buddha himself told us, do not believe my teaching on faith, but rather through thorough investigation and experiment. So if some teaching goes against reason, we should not accept it. Take time. We are so quick to judge. We jump into everything. We jump into things and we jump out of them. That's what's truly sad, is that we jump in and we jump out. And part of it is that part of the problem with younger people is all this technology that we've mentioned here today. Short attention span. So I'm going to close with another nod to Nadia Murad. So we have this very, very short attention span, and like that author said that hopefully by next week I'll find and be able to share with you, our convictions are a mile wide and skin deep. So what this author, this reporter pointed out in reporting on Nadia Murad's win of the Nobel Peace Prize, her name is Emma Graham Hudson. She's a reporter for The Guardian and The Observer, again, from Great Britain. I actually do have to give a nod to CNN for the 5 minutes they talked about this win, and for the New York Times, who actually wrote an article about them winning, and then nothing more was said. So I will give a nod to those two American news outlets. But while Iraq and the West claim victory over ISIS, thousands of women still are traumatized and living in limbo in refugee camps with little or no medical, emotional, or mental support. Thousands of Yazidi women are still missing. So it is inspiring to see Nadia Murad recognized with perhaps the world's most prestigious prize. It is an award that celebrates her own extraordinary courage, vital work everywhere. Her. And I am not saying that all of us are going to grow up and have the courage that this woman has, or this man, or these women have. But it would be nice to think that we can be raised in such a way that should we face such terrible crises in our lives, such horrible disruptions and trauma, that we would have the inner strength to come back. And if you are refusing to listen to someone else's idea, if you are calling someone who disagrees with you a hater, you do not have the inner strength to survive something like what Nadia Murad survived. You do not have the inner strength to serve women in the Congo like Dr. Dennis did. You do not have the strength to survive being shot in the head and nearly killed like Malala did, and then go out and tell the world what's going on in these countries where women are denied education. And these are the heroes we should be putting up in front of our women. We have nobody in our government that even comes close to the courage that any one of these three people show. These people should be in our classrooms. They should be on our news shows. Everybody should be talking about people like this, past, present, and future. And we need to flip that mindset of what's in it for me. Do not ask what's in it for you. Do not ask what we out here can do for you. Learn to do for yourself, and ask not what your community can do for you. Ask what you can do for your community. I'd like to thank Celia for being my guest. I would like to thank my wonderful, amazing producer, Bobby Lacera. Next week, I'll be here with my husband again, Robert Vetter, anthropologist, to talk about mastery versus mediocrity, which will play into the theme we have going on here today. So I want to thank you all also for listening. I wish you all a bright and beautiful and wonderful day. Peace, love, rock and roll, and some fun out there. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to this very serious and very important topic today. Have a wonderful evening.